Stablecoins are now over $231 billion. They are now transferring over $2.11 trillion per month as well. There's over 25 million active addresses and over 100 and almost 62 million holders. And the crazy part about this is they just continue to grow and grow and grow. And if you think that this is crazy in terms of the numbers that are on the screen right now, I'm telling you right now, all of these numbers will 10x in the coming years because stablecoins are not slowing down. In fact, they're getting accelerated by some of the biggest names out there, including the Federal Reserve. Now, when we think about the Federal Reserve, we're also thinking about what is their plan? Well, we know that their plan is to utilize stablecoins, but is their plan to tap into RLUSD specifically and utilize Ripple with XRP? Well, let's talk about that. Let's actually dive on in to what just happened over the last couple weeks with stablecoins. Now, Sam Broner from A16Z did make a post recently saying that the past month has been among the most important in payment history. The month fintechs embraced stablecoins. Legacy payment companies are bootstrapping an on-chain economy. I break down the key announcements and share my thoughts on what they mean for the industry. Here we have May 7th through the 8th. Stripe launches their stablecoin financial accounts, USDB, programmable stablecoin linked ramp card. Then also on the 7th, MoneyGram unveils MoneyGram ramps, stablecoin cash and on and off ramp services in 170 plus countries. May 6th, Coinbase introduces X402 standard for internet native stablecoin payments. May 6th as well, Visa announces strategic partnership with bank for stablecoin infrastructure. April 28th and the 30th, MasterCard and Visa roll out stablecoin linked card products for everyday purchases because, again, stablecoins are swallowing up MasterCard and Visa. April 23rd, PayPal offers 3.7% yield on PYUSD balances in PayPal and Venmo. April 21st, Circle launches Circle Payments Network with major global banks. And then April 1st, Circle files to go public on the New York Stock Exchange. When we think about what's actually going on here, like I said, stablecoins are not slowing down. In fact, they're speeding up more and more and more every single day. Every other week, there's more and more updates about stablecoins. And the crazy thing about this is that we don't even have stablecoin legislation in the US. It's still a work in progress. The second that we actually have legislation in the US around stablecoins, the game officially actually begins. Like if we're thinking about $231 billion, thinking like, oh, that's a crazy amount. That's a crazy amount, right? No. If we get stablecoin legislation in the US, this number quickly balloons into like $2.3 trillion. We 10x in a very short amount of time because legislation will not just support stablecoins. It will approve them to be integrated and utilized within the US system. Now, I am thinking about the Fed because we do know in the middle of April that Jerome Powell did assert support for stablecoin legislation and even said that the digital asset space will achieve mainstream adoption and that stablecoin legislation will actually be a very good idea to not just support, the stablecoins, but it could actually be very bullish for, the US specifically. But again, when we think about the Fed getting behind this, and by the way, I do have the video clip. I'm going to play that here in a second. But when we think about this, right, we think about what is the Fed planning with stablecoins as well, which I'll talk about that here in a second. Let's first listen closely to this video clip. Check it out.
How do you see the potential for more favorable regulations coming on them and potential risks from that for the system?
So we went through a wave of failures and fraud and things like that were the headlines for a couple of years. And I think what you see now is, and during that period, by the way, we worked with Congress to try to get a legal framework for stable coins, which would have been a nice place to start. We were not successful. I think that the climate is changing and you're moving into sort of more mainstreaming of that whole sector. So Congress is again looking at both the Senate and the House are looking at a legal framework for stable coins. Depending on what's in it, that's a good idea. We need that. There isn't one now. And stable coins are a digital product that could actually have fairly wide appeal and should contain consumer protections of the typical sorts and transparency, and that's what the Senate and the House are working on. So that's a positive thing. I also think some of the, we took a pretty conservative, and other bank regulators took an even more conservative perspective on the guidance and rules we imposed on banks. I think there'll be some loosening of that, and I think we'll try to do it in a way that preserves safety and soundness, but that permits and fosters appropriate innovation, but that does so in a way that, again, doesn't put consumers at risk in ways they don't understand or make banks less safe and sound.
Now, what's crazy about this is the individual that he's speaking to is an advisor on the advisory board for Ripple USD. He's right down here, Raghuram Rajan, the former governor of the Reserve Bank of India, which, by the way, he was an economist at the IMF. On top of that, he has been a very prominent name around finance for well over a decade. He also held positions on the board of the Bank for International Settlements as well. This is a very, very prominent figure in finance. And now he's an advisor on the advisory board for RLUSD. There's also, Sheila Bair from the FDIC and the founding chair of the Systemic Risk Council. She is one of the most prominent names out there as well. And the additional players here, you have, former first vice president and chief operating officer at the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston. Guys, the names tied back to RLUSD is just insane. But on top of that, we know that Ripple has had massive ties back to the Fed for years. We look at Michael Barr, for an example. He was an advisor at Ripple. Back in 2022, we did get we got the announcement that he will be supervising the Federal Reserve. But also we go to the Federal Reserve Fed Payments Improvement website, where they did introduce the U.S. Faster Payments Council. Now, this council did get announced at a time where they were looking into making payments efficient. Basically, also, when we think about the overall goal of the Faster Payments Council themselves, it's very clear that they just want faster payments. They want to make sure that the financial system is updated, it's upgraded fully. And this is through specific technology, right? Digital assets, digital currencies, DLT, blockchain. It's all changing the infrastructure around payments. And this is exactly what the U.S. Faster Payments Council, is a part of. But what's crazy about this is we know that Ripple is working with the U.S. Faster Payments Council because they teamed up back in 2023 for a global survey unveiling key insights into blockchain payment adoption. And if we actually look at this, we have blockchain and payments isn't just buzz, it's unlocking real value. Our survey found that 77% of leaders see blockchain as beneficial for customers. Plus, benefits like transparency and cost savings are on the rise. Use cases for blockchain payments are diverse, but interest varies. From domestic B2B applications to cross-border transactions, leaders are exploring different avenues. Discover which use cases are gaining traction in our survey. Despite the enthusiasm, concerns around blockchain payments still exist. Regulatory clarity, price volatility, and industry adoption are top worries. However, legislative progress and growing acceptance signal a maturing market. Efficiency and sustainability matter. As blockchain technology evolves, so do considerations for energy consumption and environmental impact. Our survey highlights a strong focus on environmental impact and the importance of energy-efficient blockchain protocols. Now, we know that the Faster Payments Council is a massive organization. We're going to go over the leadership behind it. But if we look at this report from Ripple and the US Faster Payments Council, okay, just take a quick look at what they're talking about here. Here we have that according to World Economic Forum, G20 leaders now prioritize blockchain technology to address problems posed by outdated financial infrastructure, including boosting stablecoin and digital asset use to create interoperable, efficient, affordable, and accessible financial systems. So stablecoins, everything that we're hearing about stablecoins, the growth around stablecoins, this has been planned. In fact, it's been planned by these organizations. This is not new. Ripple has been, a part of this since day one. We go down here as well. We're seeing Stripe being talked about, incorporating cryptocurrency-based rails. This is USDC stablecoin. Now they have their own stablecoin initiatives. Also, broader stablecoin adoption for payments can likely be attributed to cost savings. Cross-border payments using a stablecoin is up to 80% less expensive for the end user compared to traditional remittance operators. That means that for the for a $500 remittance, the cost of on-chain FX conversion combined with the on and off ramp can be transacted for as little as $4.80, much smaller than the average cost of a remittance, which hovers around $20. Now, on top of that, they do also mention down here that while regulatory clarity appears to be the adoption linchpin, the industry is trending in a positive direction. In the US, President Biden released a first of its kind framework for the crypto regulation. Highlights include how financial institutions can and should adapt and evolve for better cross-border transactions, as well as the benefits of digital currencies like CBDCs and stablecoins to enable a more efficient, sustainable payment system. Now, again, this was back in 2023. 2 years later, we are now starting to see legislation pick up around stablecoin initiatives. Ripple was ahead of the ball here. Now, on top of that, let's go over here to the Faster Payments Council. This is just the About section. The Faster Payments Council is an industry-led membership organization whose vision is world-class payment system where Americans can safely and securely pay anyone, anywhere, at any time, and with near immediate funds availability. By design, the FPC encourages a diverse range of perspectives and is open to all stakeholders in the U.S. payment system. Guided by principles of fairness, inclusiveness, flexibility, and transparency, the FPC uses collaborative problem-solving approaches to resolve the issues that are inhibiting broad, faster payments adoption in this country. When we look at the leadership, look at the names of the players tied to this, the companies. These are massive enterprise companies, major, prominent names that people know, credit unions, banks, MasterCard's on here, American Express, the Clearinghouse, for an example, the NASDAQ's tied back to it. Again, massive names. Volante Technologies, Ripple Partner. There's so many names, including, of course, Ripple, as you guys can see from James Selleck. And it's crazy because these are the types of organizations that I focus on, because when we think about the working groups that are tied to this as well, this is a very different organization opposed to like the Digital Pound Foundation or the Digital Euro Association. The reason why is because you have major banks tied to it, but you have clearinghouses. You have clearinghouses and prominent cross-border payment names. This is not just some organization. No, this is a organization that is planning to not only modernize, but completely revolutionize the US payment system with specific names. And of course, Ripple is one of those names. And the discussions here are all about stablecoins in a time where we now have the Fed, which, by the way, the Fed is behind the US Faster Payments Council. But in a time where we have the Fed highlighting support for stablecoin initiatives and talking to one of the advisors on the board of Ripple USD, it's very easy to assume that Ripple, with RLUSD and XRP being the DLT rail under the hood, are going to be utilized in some way. And also, when we think about how bullish this actually is for XRP, all right, think about the demand, right? I asked AI, I asked Grok on X, I talked about, why RLUSD would make XRP extremely valuable, right? And the main thing here is driving demand and utility on the XRP ledger, right? You have increased XRP ledger usage and XRP demand because, the adoption around the stablecoin is growing. It's being utilized for cross-border payments, DeFi, or even tokenized asset settlements. The more XRP is burned and utilized, which increases its scarcity and value. Greater RLUSD usage also boosts XRP ledger activity, attracting more participants and enhancing network liquidity, which supports XRP's price. You could also see XRP being utilized as a bridge currency between not just RLUSD, but yen transactions, pound transactions, the Brazilian real, you name it. Institutional adoption and regulatory compliance as well, because RLUSD is 100% designed for institutional use. It's fully compliant, backed by and fully regulated by the New York Department of Financial Services. Like, all of these things really kind of boost, if you will, RLUSD's status in this space compared to its competitors, and also makes it very, very valuable for institutional use, because You know, when we think about institutional players, they're going to tap into something that's fully compliant, fully regulated, that they can trust. RLUSD is that thing. So, you know, again, this is all very beneficial for XRP, but the question here is the Fed going to tap into RLUSD? Well, I don't care so much about what the Fed does. In fact, I care about what the Treasury does. We know Brad Garlinghouse just quoted Scott Bessent recently, talking about how stablecoins are exploding, you know, globally for the real world usage. But he said the sooner that the US can pass workable, clear rules, the faster it reaps the benefits of this tech. Listen, it doesn't have to be all about RLUSD. We just know that the second that we actually get this Genius Act fully pushed through, the second that we actually start to see stablecoins like RLUSD explode in not just use and demand, but also the growth behind it from the transactional volume, which would affect the underlying network, in this case XRPL or even Ethereum, it would cause a surge in the underlying asset, aka XRP. This is why legislation is so crucial. And by the way, the reason why the US will use stablecoins or support stablecoins like RLUSD and integrate them within the system is because of how beneficial they are for the actual dollar. And we look at the Treasury because, again, stablecoin issuers like Ripple could become one of the top holders of treasuries, which would completely diminish the fear of China dumping treasuries or Japan dumping treasuries, and all of a sudden the US is scrambling to find a buyer for US debt. We no longer have those concerns. This is why stablecoins, and specifically stablecoin issuers, are going to become very successful. And we really look at Ripple here, and then we also look at XRP and the XRPL because the underlying networks and the network tokens that power them, they're going to also be seeing a big amount of demand and volume on them as well. So with that being said, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys did, definitely leave a like, subscribe, set notifications on because more free content. You guys are more than welcome to follow me on Twitter and join the free Discord in the description below. And with that being said, guys, it's been Nick. Thanks for watching. Peace out.